In this video, we're going to cover how to make tiles and use them and build our rooms with tiles instead of using objects to make our backgrounds. To do this, let's start with a new tile. So I'm going to file new, and let's go with. I'll just draw a really quick one. Let's go with a 32 by 32 and see what happens. Pixel one. Alright, the resolution doesn't matter. The width, I'm doing 32 by 32. Press OK. You can make tiles any size you want. This one's obviously going to be really, really small. Let's zoom in on that at like 1500%. And let's draw, let's say, make some rocks. So I'm going to switch out to the color right here, the blue color to, let's go with the medium gray color. And let's change the brush size down to, well, I'm going to try, let's go with, if you hold down a brush, you can set it to, hold down a brush, you get the pencil option. And pencil option will give you pixel over pixel. So let's go with, say, a giant rock here, make them different sizes, one there, a big one right about there, and there. Something like that. So we have the option now to, well, let's color it. So let's use a lighter color. Let's go with bucket fill, which is right here, and I'll fill that. Oops. It looks like it's overlapping with a little bit of the tolerance is set to 20. Let's set the tolerance to 0 on that, and that'll allow it to. Actually, no, it's still. Let's drop off anti-aliasing as well. There we go. So anti-aliasing was giving it an overlap. So we might be able to leave the tolerance at 20. Might not need to. There we go. So we have rough gray blocks. Let's go and detail some more. So let's grab this gray color that I had before, and let's try and push down. Let's stay around that area. Back to brush, and let's scribble in some more, kind of round off the blocks a little bit. Alright, let's pick a much darker color, not quite black, but just enough to kind of outline things, put a little bit of outline in there. And so we're going to shade the bottom side now. So let's a little brighter of a color, and all the undersides are going to get dark. So let's shade some more dark right here, and some dark right here, and we'll put some on that side. So it kind of looks like that. Let's go with the much darker tone, and we'll put some shading over here. So all the undersides get darker, and let's go with the brighter tone. Let's go with that shade. And all the upper sides are going to get white, or to some degree a little bit brighter gray. And so it kind of makes it look like it's popping out now. Alright, it would probably help if I put maybe another bit of a square up there, see what that looks like. So we'll go with that, kind of outline this a bit more, so as if it's a bottom over there. And I can switch back out to the lighter color, kind of shade that up there. Okay, and see what that looks like. If I wanted to add a little more, let's go with that color. Probably shade a little bit of cracks in the rocks or whatever. Probably a bit too dark of a shade for that. Let's try and lighten it up a little more and re-go over top those areas. So that kind of gives a little more detail to the rocks. However, well, let's grab a little more on that area. A little there and there. Alright. This isn't quite tileable at the moment. If I zoom out, you can kind of see that it kind of makes a rock formation. But we want to make sure the rock is tileable. If I go to File, New, and let's say I make this 512 by 512, and press OK. So 512 will match the 32 interval rate, so it'll click in pretty well. if I go to move, let's say I move this over here, I grab this one, and I move it onto here. Oops, try it again. Alright, so it drops our tile in here. If I were to drop another one in here, and put it next to it, they're not quite going to match. If I look closely, you'll see that the lines don't match. If I were to grab one more and stack it on top, again, this line kind of starts to match, but the rest of them don't. And let's grab one last one and put it in this corner. So the tiles don't perfectly match. It's not quite seamless. So we're going to work on making a seamless tile real quick. To do that, we're going to go to, let's zoom in a bit, Filter, Other, Offset, and we're going to do half of what I did. Since this was done at 32 pixels, I'm going to do this offset at 16 by 16. And you see it puts a line kind of right here. It shifted everything over and down by 16. So I press OK. And so now if we can get rid of this and make it look correct, it'll tile everything correctly. So let's go back to the brush, and let's go switch out to a dark gray. So I'm going to tile this, and let's say I'm going to put a rock there, and maybe curve it across there. Maybe let's cut that down to there. Let's put a rock about there. Maybe put that there, cut that across, and maybe cut that over there, and see what happens. I'll switch back out to this lighter gray and paint out that one, paint out some of that, paint out some of that, and let's switch back out to the darker color, put that in there, and put that in there. Alright, so now we have a little more organization to that. Should probably do one more up here. Kind of cut it across to there and see what happens. Alright, let's fill in with our shadings again. So all the darks go on the bottom. Put some darks down there. And you want to kind of keep the same direction of lighting. So the light's always coming from this top left corner, and we're going to bring it downwards so the shadows will correspond to the left side of this. Alright, that should work for that. And now we're going to go grab the brighter colors, the whitish color, and put those in the top left. Alright, so that brightens that up. And let's go grab some of that mid-grain color and fill that in a bit. Alright, so now it looks, oops, missed one color. Grab that one, drop it right there. Alright, so you can kind of see that it has the shadowy effect. Let's try and reduce some of that a little bit so it's not as bright. And we could even exaggerate and go really bright and put some really bright whites at the top, just to make it look like it's popping out a little more. Okay, so there's our rocks. When we zoom out, we have a nice rock formation, kind of intricate and interesting. That could probably be adjusted a little bit. Actually, I missed some gray over here as well. Let's get that over there. Let's fill that in, kind of take that out. Let's see what happens there. Alright, so now if I set this back, go Filter, Other, Offset, set that back to the original, this is what I get for the original block. So now if I were to take this and drag this, let's move that closer, drag this into here, zoom out. If I start rebuilding this from here to the new one in here, so because I've tiled and offsetted it, they'll all click back together perfectly in place. And so it should look pretty seamless now. So when you look at this, you can't tell where that line was. Like this one, you can kind of tell where that line was kind of broken. But now it looks all nice and uniform. So if I keep stacking these together, they'll all fit perfectly together. And you won't be able to tell where that divide was. It starts to get some bit of repetition in some areas, but otherwise it's a pretty interesting rock wall now. And if I wanted to make, let's say, a vine, let's go File, New, and let's go 32 by 32. Okay. Let's zoom in, grab some green real quick, and brush kind of like the vine, some green, some leaves, some more leaves, and coming up to here. So more or less a rough vine. Fill in some of that. And let's switch out to some darker shades. Put all the darks on the same corresponding side. Alright. Let's see if I can get rid of that little spot right there. Alright, got rid of that. And let's put some bright greens on there. Alright, so we've got a vine. And again, we'll do offset again, filter, other, offset. We're going to keep the horizontal offset the same. We don't need to split it halfway. So now we're just going to vertically offset and try and fix this little halfway point. So we'll go back to brush, and we'll grab that color. I'll put some more green leafy area over there. Some more at the top. Not too much, probably some more right there. Maybe more right there. Alright, now we're going to switch back out to the light green. Some light green in there. Alright, so now we have somewhat of a repetitive, let's grab that one more time. Somewhat of a repetitive pattern. So if I wanted to, I can revert it back. I shouldn't need to. Filter, other, offset, it puts it back. Press OK. So now I've got this one. If I were to take this and drag this over here, we're going to bring the white pixels with it as well, and we don't really want the white background. So I'm going to go back to this one, double click the background to free it, press OK, and then magic wand, which sometimes is hidden under this one. Grab the magic wand, and I want to make sure I grab just the green pixels, or the white pixels. This looks like it's grabbing some of the green as well. So let's deselect that. Set tolerance to 0, so it only grabs just what I'm looking, just the white. And we should be able to delete. Control Z. We got to get rid of anti-aliasing as well. Control D to deselect. So now it's just the white pixels. Delete, delete, delete. Control D to deselect. We'll move this in place, and it drops exactly on here. And so I can rearrange this green vine however we wanted to put it. And we put it back together, and it'll perfectly click together. And we start to get this interesting green vine growing on the side of here. We can keep grabbing more if we want to, but we're going to do that inside GameMaker so we can add some versatility to it. So I'm going to Control Z these green vines out of here. So I have a new tile. So what we're going to do now is make a tile sheet to put all these on here. And this one is the one we've already made. So for a tile sheet, I'm going to go with File, New. Let's pick, I did 512 by 512, which is what this one is. As you can see, it's 512 by 512. You can more or less pick any number you want, maybe 1024 in the 1000 range. These are kind of power of 2 numbers, which is typical to find in video games. The 512s, the 1024s. 2048s, you probably don't want to go higher than that. That's really a high resolution. 512, as you can see, can already fit a lot of tiles on here. So I don't need the rest of these. I'm going to get rid of all these other tiles. I'm going to delete those out. If you want a white background, that's fine. You don't necessarily need the white background if you think it would help. I'm going to delete the white background, so let's go with double click to unlock it. And then I'm going to select the background with the magic wand or the marquee tool and delete it out with backspace. Control D to deselect, and that clears out my background. So I have a nice blank document. So we're going to go grab these tiles now and drop these in here. So I'm going to grab this one and throw it in here. As you can see, it fits in here, but we want to make this kind of snap to the 16 by 16 range that we made. This will make it a lot easier to grab it later. So one way to do this is to go up to File, Edit, Preferences down here, and you can set Guides, grid, and slices. I'm going to set my grid to pixels and put a pixel every grid lines every 16. So it'll click and play 16. I don't really need any subdivisions for that, so I'm going to set that to 0. I could do, if I wanted to, a 32 or 64 or some interesting interval that would help a lot, but I'm going to go with 16 and set these subdivisions to 0. Looks like it has to be 1. Alright, press OK. And so now we need to turn the grid on. So it's View, Show, Grid. And so that puts the grid on here at a 16 pixel interval. This was actually drawn at 32, so let me go back and change that again real quick. Preferences, Grids, set that to 32. Okay, so that pops it in 32. So now if I try and move this thing, it's still not snapping to the grid, but it helps line it up. If I were to go to View and Snap to, I can snap to the grid. So now when I move, it'll click perfectly in place and line up with a minimal effort. So I'm going to move all the way to the, well, I don't have to go to the top. As you can see, it pretty much fits exactly in place. So I'm going to put this here. You don't need any more than one, just one because it's tileable. We can minimize that one. I'm going to grab the vine and drag this one in here. You could put it either right next to it. You could put it side to side. I'm going to leave it right here. And again, it doesn't matter how far over or to the side you make it because it'll still tile vertical. So you can put it anywhere you want. If you wanted to keep drawing some more pictures, you could just directly draw right into here. For tileability, it's easier to make it separate and drag it into your tile sheet. But if you wanted to draw, and we're on pencil mode, I could draw, let's say, happy smiley face guy. And let's go bucket fill with a nice yellow goldish color. That'll work. Boom. And we should probably fill his eyes in with some white. Alright, so we have a smiley face guy, so we can draw sprites right into here. If I turn off the grid by going to View, Show, Grid, I can turn it off and I can see how the sprites will be lining up in the game. So these are my tile sheets. So this is much easier than using objects for every object you have. I'm just going to draw a whole bunch of background stuff. So once you're done, you go File, Save As, and I'm going to call this Tile Sheet. And I'm going to save this as a PNG so it keeps my transparency. So Tile Sheet PNG, I'm going to throw it on the desktop, press OK. Then jump over to GameMaker. Inside GameMaker, I'm going to go to New Background, which is this one right here. Create a background. I can load a background from a file, so I'm going to go with Load. And let's grab out from the desktop the sheet that I just made. Tile sheet right there. Press Open. And so it grabs my tile sheet. So if I edit the background, I can keep drawing pictures here as well. So I could draw my tile sheet right into here, but in this case I drew it in Photoshop because it's just easier to use. Don't save changes for that. The important button here is click Use as Tile Set, since we want to use it as tiles. Now we can set what type of tiles we want. Because I drew it at 32, I'm going to grab it, or set it to 32. You can always change this later. Horizontal offsets and horizontal and vertical separations. You can play with those as kind of like if your objects were separated, but in this case I bumped them right up against each other with the grid snapping by 32 by 32. So when I click, it'll grab each of these icons one by one. So I'm going to press OK now. I'll call this Tile Sheet. Tile Sheet. Alright, and now if I go to my room, I can grab, again, this only works in advanced mode. In order to grab your tiles, I have to go File, Advanced Mode. I'm pretty sure it doesn't, you don't get tile options in standard mode. You might, but I don't think so. Here we go, we can click on this part, or this one, or any pieces we want. If I grab this one, and this has the grid already turned on by 16 by 16, I can turn the grid off if I want, and drop the piece in. It's still going to click to the grid wherever I click it. I can click the next piece in and keep clicking the next, or I can hold the Shift key and just keep brushing everywhere. But it doesn't always brush exactly unless you keep it a nice clean straight line without too much overlap. But because it's 16 by 16, it's also going to cause some mishaps when you try dropping pieces in because they don't quite match the alignment. So I'm going to set this to 32 by 32, which will match what I've drawn on here. So now when I try drawing, they'll automatically click everywhere. And if I hold the Shift key, I can paint everywhere, and it just constantly keeps painting a nice clean background here. So I can paint tiles everywhere, so he has this. And this is also really efficient on the game engine because it's using the same image over and over and over again. So I just painted background tiles in there for him. If I wanted to paint the smiley face, I can grab this guy and just drop him anywhere on top. But it's overriding the one underneath because the check mark right here is delete underlying. So if I Control Z that out, uncheck delete underlying, I can drop the smiley face and it sits on top. The same with this one. I can grab the tile here, or the vine, and start dropping one here. And it perfectly matches on top. If I zoom in, you can see that it's because it's drawn with the offset, and these you don't have that break where it was. So I can keep drawing these, I can keep putting more in here, set a bunch of these vines kind of popping out of here. If you wanted to adjust the spacing, you could just take the snap off and set that to like 1 pixel by 1 pixel. And now when you start drawing, you can draw them anywhere, but they don't always sit on top exactly where you want it to go. So sometimes it's better just to leave the snap at 32. But you can turn the grid on if you want to kind of see where they're going to click in place, but the grid being set 1 by 1, you're not going to see it. So also of note, if I set this back to 32 by 32, so I have this here and I can drop these anywhere I want, and they keep overlapping. I can overlap multiple layers, turn the grid off and on. Let's go with, if you wanted to grab multiple, let's say you drew a larger piece, I can click, but it only grabs one. If I hold Shift and click, I can start grabbing more. So I can grab the entire section right here and start painting an entire section if I want. So if you drew larger sprites, like the size of a tree, if a tree was really large, I can grab a much larger area. So if I wanted to demo that real quick, let's say I go to a green for a tree. Alright, and let's say I go to brush, and let's turn on my guide so I can see where it is. But I'm going to turn off snap because I don't want to kind of snap to degree angles. View, snap to, turn off grid. So I'm going to draw a big tree here with kind of like the branches coming down, or the trunk coming down. And let's go bucket fill the green there, and let's go put a brown right there. And the green kind of, if you notice, it punched up higher than there. So I'm going to move this down just to make this match a little better. Let's grab it with the marquee, and then go to move, and kind of fit it inside this box. So it fits perfectly top to bottom inside this area and takes up 4 squares, unlike this one, which took up 1 square each. So we have one entire one. I'm going to Control S to save it and put it back under the same file name, and it should automatically update in GameMaker. So tile sheet save, replace it, and we now have a tree in there. So jump back over to GameMaker, and it may not be updated immediately. You might have to go to the tile sheet we have and re-import it, load background, and click it again, tile sheet, open, and then it updates it. You can edit background if you wanted to, but click use tile sheet again and set that back to 32 by 32. Press OK, and we go to the room. So now we have it redrop back in here. Again, if I wanted to grab part of the tree, I could, but I don't want to grab every part by part and put it back together. I can just hold Shift and grab wherever I want and grab the pieces. So I'm going to grab the entire tree at once and drop a tree in here, which there it is, the tree is on top. In some cases, you do get the part where it's overlapping. Yeah, sometimes it happens. Let's grab those and drop that in there. If you wanted to, let's see, you wanted to grab something smaller, like a part of this area right here, you can set this. By default, you're grabbing 32 by 32, but if you grab set it to 16 by 16, it'll start changing. If you hold the control key, you can start grabbing 16 by 16, which is what this is set to. If this is set to 32 by 32, the control key is going to be the same size. So you can set the snap here and grab parts of sections with the control key to pick the snap size you want, or just hold shift and grab entire sections. Also, we can change the tile sheets between multiple tile sheets. I originally had the castle, but the castle doesn't quite, the angle parts do make it a lot more problematic to try and put these pieces in place. So if I drop one here and drop one here, it's really hard to get these angles to work because they have that overlapping issue. So it's sometimes easier or a lot easier just to draw nice square pieces. Let's go back to the original tile sheet, or the one I just made right now. You can change the current layer, which is how you would fix how the overlaps work. So we're going to add a layer, and we're going to call it depth of, I don't know, 1. It's different than the other one. So press OK. And since current layer 1, so we're going to go to the tree now and drop the tree in place. And the tree is now overwriting everything else because the 1 is a higher number. So now I don't have to worry about what's not overwriting or not. So the tree drops in there, and I can keep dropping lots of trees in the background if I want. If I were to change this layer, let's go to change, I can set the depth. If I set the depth to, let's say, -1, and then try drawing with this, it still works in this case. So depending what number you pick, if it's on the same layer, you're going to get issues where they kind of collide because it doesn't know what layer. But you can swap out your layers and kind of differentiate between what's going to go up and what's going to go down. Let's say I draw a layer. Let's change that layer to 10 and see what happens. So I start drawing with 10, and now the previous one is overwriting where I'm dropping this now. And the character is always going to be on top because we set his depth to be on top. Alright, and if I go back to this one and start drawing, this is going to start drawing at top, but if I set it back to this layer and start drawing, now it'll set behind. Let's see how that worked. So whatever layer you set is going to determine out which one's going to be on top or the bottom. And that's more or less how tiles work. So you can draw lots of tiles and just paint them on here. You don't have to make objects. Tiles is a lot easier to use than making everything you're going to drop on here objects. And if I go back to play now, none of it's collidable because it's all just tile backgrounds. Eventually. There we go. So now I can move left and right, and he walks on top of everything. Nothing is in the right place or out of place. Then you can start building your entire world using tiles, which is a lot easier. And that about covers how to use tiles. And actually, alternatively, if you didn't want to use tiles, there's one other option. We can set the background also. So whereas tiles are here, you can pick which tiles you want, which is usually a pretty easy way of doing it. Backgrounds right here, we can load entire drawings. So if you drew an entire background in Photoshop, for instance, I have this background here, which I drew, I can drop the entire image into Photoshop or into GameMaker. So to do that, we go to backgrounds, and we're going to pick the background we want. Background 1, and it drops it in place. The tiles still sit on top and the character sits on top because it's in the background, but it does put a background in here. If you wanted to make a brand new room, let's turn that one back off. Let's make a new room, and let's grab backgrounds on this room and throw in this one. So now I have the background. So if I were to go to the character, grab the character, drop him in here, and press play, he's going to fall right through. He doesn't collide with anything. I'd have to go through and add the collision. Hold the shift key, I can draw out a bunch of them. Let's make it more straighter. There we go. So now he's on the ground. If I press play now, since the collision is set to be visible, I'm still going to see that. Oops, I'm in the wrong room. You can program the game which room to open, or you can just drag the room above. So now it'll be on top. So this will be the first room that plays. Before I do that, let's turn these to be invisible. So I'm going to double click on collision and set that to uncheck the visible box. So now when I press play, these black boxes will disappear. So we won't see any more black boxes. So I press play now. So this will be the first room that loads because I reorganized the rooms. And the black will disappear. And here he is walking in the environment that you drew in Photoshop. So you can sketch out an entire environment. If I keep walking too far, he's going to fall off because I haven't put collision everywhere. So he's not colliding with the environment, he's colliding with the invisible blocks I put here. So if I want a wall right here to correspond to the wall here, I just put a bunch of blocks. If I don't want him to walk left, I put some invisible blocks. And I can put some invisible blocks up here so we can jump on top there and keep building the room that way based on a drawing that I have. The downside to using a drawing is that it is a lot more intensive on the program than the little tiles, and your file size will get a lot larger. It's still a 2D video game, so it's not going to be that bad, but it does, if you were trying to keep it retro gaming with smaller file sizes, having a large drawing will take up more file space, but it's really not that big of a deal. And that more or less covers how the different types of tiling works, whether it's a background or a tile sheet. You can also set views. The view will basically follow the character around the room. So if you wanted to do that, you would go to Enable Use of Views, set the object to follow as the character. So you have the character to follow, we're going to use the views, and visible when the room starts. By clicking this, you can see that it puts a border around here. The border is the same size as the room. If I wanted the room to be like 1,000 width, so now I can start walking further to the left. The view in room, it puts the room bigger, but I don't want the room to be that big. I can make the entire settings bigger, so the width of the entire room the character can walk in will be 1,000 large now. And it starts to repeat the background because it's set to repeat. If I go back to backgrounds, you can stretch it if you wanted to. We don't need to stretch it though. And we don't want to tile it horizontal because that's the tiling that's causing it to repeat, and tiling vertically, if it was long enough, it would tile there. But we'll tile it that way just to, well, I'll leave it off. We'll go to settings again. So the settings says this is the length of the room. You can see it's gray. This is the entire length of the room. We'll go back to views, and the view in room is what I'm going to see. I don't want to see that much. If I wanted to keep Super Nintendo sizing, it would be 256 by 224, but that's going to be small for the size of the sprite that I drew. And port on screen is the export size, which doesn't necessarily matter, but I'll go back to 256 by 224 and see what happens. 224. Alright, and this is kind of like the spacing that the character will follow, or this until the screen moves. So let's press play now and see what happens. So with the enable use of views and the view visible when the room starts, it'll follow the character left and right as I move left and right. Boom. Actually, it's not following. There it is. It's following him, but the spacing isn't far enough. So we need to go back and set these 32s to something like, I don't know, 200 by 200. Since the room is only 200, that should be plenty large enough. We'll press play, and that should correct the screen centering better on him. Boom. So now the screen's centered to him, so wherever I walk, it follows around him. But again, the screen should probably be a lot larger for the size of the sprite that I drew. But that about covers how that works.